listening to the Straight to Video podcast with Rob Lane.
80 episodes. We did it. Crazy to think that this tiny little podcast, which I started last summer, is closing in on nearly 100 shows. Thank you so much. But yeah, welcome along to episode 80 of the Straight to Video podcast. Thank you for the great response to the last episode chat with Rat frontman Stephen Piercy. A lot of you said it was way too short, and I agree, so I would love to dive into a part 2 with him. So if you're on Twitter, why not send him a tweet at Stephen E. Piercy to say you'd love to hear him back on the show, and I'll see if I can hook that up. If I can work it out, then I'll put it out to you lot for some question suggestions, which could be a lot of fun or get me into a lot of trouble, who knows. So where do we go from there? Well, from one legendary singer and frontman to another, as today I welcome Danny Bowes from Thunder to the Straight to Video podcast. This was a blast, as Thunder are a band that have pretty much been alongside me since I very first got into rock music. I always had a love for rock tunes since the mid to late 80s, but 1990 was the year I really dived headfirst into it becoming a passion, and as I'm sure a lot of you will remember, that is the year that Danny and Thunder really blew up after their appearance at the Monsters of Rock festival at Donington Park in the late summer of that year. Really was a killer lineup, and whilst the white jumpsuit which Steven Tyler of Aerosmith wore was pretty iconic, it's images of Poison and Thunder which are etched in my brain from hours of scouring the pages of any rock magazine I could find, as I was away on holiday when the festival was on. I came home to recordings of the band's sets from Radio 1, and as I'm sure a lot of you remember, openers Thunder totally stole the show and was the band everyone was talking about. When I knew I was getting the chance to talk to Danny, I revisited some clips on YouTube from that show, and not gonna lie, I had that goosebump moment, particularly when they rip into what I think is their second song of the set, Backstreet Symphony. If you want to see what it looks like when a band tips the scales and is suddenly welcomed into the hearts of thousands, and from that moment things are no longer gonna be the same for them again, then watch this clip, it's amazing. Since then, Thunder have rightly so become a British and rock and roll institution, which was cemented recently when their brand new album, All the Right Noises, blasted into the album charts at number 3. Not just the rock charts or the indie charts, this was the mainstream official UK charts. Just brilliant. And rock is dead, apparently. Certainly not according to these guys. So for more information, then check out thunderonline.com for everything you need to know about the new record. Danny, as I hope, was a pleasure to chat to and shared some great stories. We covered a lot of cool stuff about his growing up and his career, and of course we spoke about that 1990 Donington Monsters of Rock show. There was a lot more I'd love to have asked, but I think you'll enjoy this one. Before then, make sure you go and support our mates at Dead Skull Coffee if you're looking to find a real, honest rock and roll coffee company. They serve up some great tasting ground or full bean coffee and even have a kick-ass merch stall on their website. What's even better is that they're offering listeners to the Straight to Video podcast 15% off their entire order by visiting www.deadskullcoffee.co.uk and entering the promo code STV at checkout. Or if you listen to the show at stvpod.com, then click on the Dead Skull logo in our banner and it will take you right to their site, and the discount will be automatically applied when you check out. Nice and easy. So here we go, you lot. Hope you have fun listening to this as I talk to Thunder's Danny Bowes right here on the Straight to Video podcast. Let's do this.
Shut up, I can't stand another word, another
it going, Danny? All right?
Not too bad, sir. How are you?
Yeah, pretty good, thank you. Congratulations on the new album, number 3. Holy shit.
Yeah. It's a very strange thing. You finish a record and normally you're at it straight away. You're sharing it with a label is sharing it with everybody else. But of course, when we finished it, it suddenly became pandemic time. So we had to basically sit on the thing for, best part of a year, which was very strange. I got to the stage where I was listening to the album in a completely different way than I normally listen to our albums, because I never get a chance to listen to them for very long. You make them and you're sick of it. Next thing you know, the only time you listen to it is when you're refreshing prior to rehearsals.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the time you're doing it, you're actually doing it in front of people. So you have a completely different relationship with the album. This time around, all last summer, I was running to the album.
Wow.
I'm at the stage where I hear this album now, it's like I'm a punter.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it's not like I'm on the record at all. I'm just listening to it for pleasure. It's really strange. Never been like that before with an album. So it's very, very odd.
This whole landscape is new for everybody. It's weird. It really is.
I know. It is. It's very strange. Obviously, there's a lot of people lost their lives. A lot of people gone through a lot of suffering. But for those of us who have been lucky enough to not go through that, I don't know about you, but I got a nice house, nice garden, plenty of green space nearby. All my kids are moved away from home, so I don't have to do any homeschooling. I'm not trapped in a flat, all that kind of stuff, which must be absolutely horrendous. If you were old and on your own, must be horrendous, Or you've got people in care homes, but you can't go see. That must be absolutely bloody terrible, especially if you can see them decline. I really feel for those sorts of people. But for me, actually hasn't been too bad. We've been busy as hell. I've been getting fit as you like. It's been great. I really enjoyed it. So, I don't want it to go on, but, but it certainly hasn't been too painful for me. It's got to be said.
How are you for time, Danny? I don't want to take the piss with my questions and stuff like that if you've got like another interview lined up or anything.
Right. I can go to 11:45.
I'll dive in then. The theme of my podcast, it's a bit of a tracing people's journey to kind of where they are today. So I'm not going to go through the whole Thunder timeline.
You ain't got time, mate.
I know that.
Nobody has.
Am I right? You grew up on a council estate in Eltham, kind of South London?
Well, I lived initially in West Ham. That's where I was born. I lived above a betting shop. And then from there, we moved to Plumstead, South London, near Woolwich, where we lived above a carpet shop. And then from there, we moved to a council house in Eltham, southeast London, where I lived for probably about 6 years until I was 14. And then we moved up to the other end of Eltham, which was the posh end.
Okay.
Where we're the only people in the house, in the road that lived in a council house. All the rest of them were privately owned Victorian houses. It was a lovely house, but I think the family of the guy who died sold it to the council. And somehow we ended up lucking out and living in this really lovely, lovely house and paying council rent. My dad must have thought all his birthdays had come at the same time. It was amazing. I loved it. And I was choked when they moved from there. But his father died and he needed to take his mother in, so he bought a house somewhere else. It was in Catford. It was god-awful place.
Bit of a contrast.
I think I lived in it for 6 weeks while I painted it for him. And then the moment the family moved in, I couldn't stand it. I moved out straight away.
Your dad ran a carpet business, but he'd been a singer in a band, right? With your uncles, the Soundtrackers.
Yeah, they were the Soundtrackers. Well researched, yes. My uncles were more into it than my dad. My dad was never a team player. He was very much... it was all about him, really. He didn't like relying on other people. He didn't like being part of a team and depending on them. He couldn't play an instrument, so he couldn't make it on his own. And I think he realised within about 5 minutes that he wasn't going to make any money being in the band. So he quit the band. I have got a couple of photographs of him rehearsing. I think they rehearsed in a pub with both of his brothers, my uncles. They took it much more seriously than he did, but they never got anywhere. They did get an offer to work with the Tremolos once on a tour, but most of the band couldn't do it because it meant they couldn't get the time off for work, so they didn't go. And that was their one shot missed, and they never, ever got another one.
You never know. It's like, do they take that jump, that leap of faith, if you like?
Well, we had those moments when we were kids, and I've said it to other people subsequently, you have to be prepared to jump off and wait and see what happens. And the older you get, the harder it is, because you've got roots, you've got stuff to lose. And it's hard. When you're kids, it's very different. Yeah. Jump in the van, go, sleep in the van, eat crap food, easy done.
No time limit. People aren't shouting you, you got to get back and all this kind of stuff. You can just go and let's see where it rides at.
Yeah, I think if you're lucky as well, if you've got a job and you work for somebody who's really into what you do, they'll give you the time off because they want to see you do well. And you find that all the time with young guys in bands, oh, my boss is really understanding.
That's pretty priceless, really.
Oh, it's amazing. I mean, if you've got a boss that will help you do that, then, you stand half a chance.
But it was your aunt who inadvertently introduced you into music, though, and kind of sparked a passion, right? You found a stack of old records and just kind of consumed them.
That's absolutely true. I was 11, 12 maybe. My youngest brother was very ill, had to go into hospital. My mother camped in the hospital to be near him. My father was working all the hours trying to feed us. So there was no one to look after the rest of us. We were 4 kids. So we all got packed off to relatives. And I ended up with my dad's youngest sister in Suffolk. And I had absolutely no idea what to do in the countryside. I lived on a council estate. No idea at all. I mean, the countryside was like an alien territory for me. But she gave me this stack of records and said, go in there. There's a record player. Play the records. And I did. And it changed my life, quite literally changed my life, because up until that point, we never even had a radio. So I never knew anything about music, but it blew my mind, quite literally blew my mind. And I begged her to give me her it was a rotten old monogram, this lift up lid. And I begged her to give it to me because she told me she was getting a stereogram. It's the kind of thing your nan and granddad had, it's like a big teak looking sideboard with like cutouts in the sides, But this thing was like such a big deal for her and obviously an opportunity for me. So I begged her to give me the monogram. I took the monogram. I got it. I think it was about 6 months later. I still to this day don't know how it showed up in our house, but I was beside myself the moment it arrived. That was it. I kind of basically got my arms around it and I did everything I could to get money to buy records.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. I got a job on a Saturday. I did paper rounds. I marked up papers. I did absolutely everything. And every time I got money, I went straight to the record shop, same record shop, and spent it all on records.
Because I guess back then when you was listening to those initial records, because you'd not heard much music before, you had no real filter as to what was considered cool or good or bad. You took everything on face value. So it just gave you this broad appreciation for music, I guess.
Sure. Well, the monogram came with the radio. Then I discovered the sort of the top 20, the chart rundown on a Sunday evening, whenever it was. That just gave me the impetus to, I would hear something, think that sounds good, go straight to the record shop, buy it. I bought so many singles that way. I mean, some of them, I'm quite ashamed of. I mean, I think the first actual 7-inch single I bought was by the New Seekers.
Never be ashamed of your record collection if you enjoyed it back then.
It was a Eurovision tune, if I remember. Beg, Steal or Borrow, that was the title. I can still remember the song now. Fantastic. Yeah. And then in my school, my secondary school, it turned out loads of people were into music. I didn't realize it because up until that point, those conversations were barred, to me. But the moment I got into music, I then started talking to people about music. And then we had this whole big kind of record swap thing going on. And that kind of opened your eyes to everything. And from there, it just went mad. Like I say, every Saturday, I got my money at lunchtime from the carpet shop where I worked for my dad, went straight to the record shop, spent the money. The guy who ran the shop was this guy called Mick, who turned out to live around the corner from me. He was older than me, but he was very cool. I mean, he knew everything about everything, and every time I go in there, because I was in there every Saturday, he used to say to me, have a listen to this. Go in the booth and have a listen to this. Because in those days, you could add little kind of like a pine cupboard. You could go in and listen. And it was just amazing. And I used to come back, I love this. I'll take it home. And then I got so carried away. I used to buy albums because of the covers. So many covers.
Nothing wrong with that. Take a punt. You never know what you're going to get.
And if I didn't like it, you see, because I knew the guy, I should take it back and say, I don't like this. And he'd give me money back. Change it to something else. It was amazing.
Because this would be around the time you met Luke, and didn't he have a Bowie album that you became like infatuated by?
Yeah, I remember it was the Aladdin Sane album, and I remember him bringing it into school and saying, this is such a great album. And I had to have it. I couldn't borrow it off him because he just bought it.
It was probably in tatters by the time he got it home from school, everyone passing it around.
Yeah. I honestly, genuinely can't remember. But I remember going to the shop, and that was the first proper album I bought. It was £2.39. I remember it clearly because I only had £2.29 when I got there. And a woman wouldn't give it to me for 10 pence off. I'll never forget it. And I had to walk 5 miles to the shop to get it, 5 miles home to get the 10 pence, 5 miles back to give her the money, and 5 miles home. So I walked 20 miles for that album.
You mean you couldn't just click on a button and listen to it straight away through a computer?
Yeah, well, there you go. Those were the days,
You earned that album.
I did, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I mean, even to this day, I've still got a copy of it. I've got several copies of the album, but the first copy I've still got. And in my bedroom, we lived in this council estate, like I told you, and this little council house, it had a chimney. In my bedroom was above the chimney that ran up from the kitchen. This chimney used to get really hot, but I didn't realise, and I put my vinyl album up against it. this chimney. And then when I went to play it next, the album, and it went up and down like, and it's really odd. Every time I hear the record now, it doesn't sound right to me because it doesn't go,
You got used to it in your ears.
That's right. That's right. And I even got it really, really hot and stuck it between a couple of great big encyclopedias trying to straighten it out, but it didn't work.
So being such a fan of music, buying records all the time, I'm going to jump forward just a little bit because you and Luke met, started playing music together. You being such a massive music fan and almost a collector at such a young age, how was it for you when you got the band Nothing Fancy together and you recorded your first song? How was that for you to be on the other side, having your own piece of music? Did it come out as a single, as in like a vinyl 7-inch or anything?
God, no. The first things we did, we recorded in a little 4-track demo studio not far away from where our bass player lived. And it was basically a converted garage, like a lock-up garage in a little mews. And we were there all night to record it all. We had to go in after school and we recorded it all night. I forget exactly how old we were, but we came out of there, with like big bags under our eyes. It was light in the next morning when we came out, having sat up all night, having played, because we were crap. I mean, we thought we were great, but we were absolutely dreadful. I've still got a copy of the original demo, and we didn't have a clue what we were doing.
Is this a song Looking for a Good Time, though, or was that a little bit later on?
No, that was a few years later. I mean, we were really very determined to try to get good at it as soon as possible, but we had no opportunity and no money. Our first manager, who actually paid for us to go to record that song, Looking for a Good Time.
Which sounds great, by the way. I wish my first recording sounded as good as that.
That was a proper studio. I mean, we'd been at it for quite a few years by that stage. I think probably 5 years. In fact, we drove to the studio in Bridgewater, Somerset to record that song. It was the same night that John Lennon was shot. I remember that.
Wow.
Yeah. But we'd met our manager prior to when we were trying to win a talent contest at a local venue in order to win the money to do another demo. But, I can remember that first demo, taking it to my girlfriend's house, putting it on, chuffed to pieces. I mean, bags under my eyes, falling to pieces. So desperate for her to hear it. I played it and her mother came in, who up until that point I thought was a really nice lady. She came in and said, "Oh no, what is this?" And she didn't like it at all. And I just went off her immediately. That was it. Never liked her again. She just went completely, she was so wrong. I was so driven. We were completely driven. Luke and I were always exactly the same.
What bands were you kind of basing the sound on? Was it kind of like that Bad Company-esque kind of thing, or didn't you really know?
That implies a plan. We never had a plan. We were just desperate to do it. We never got a chance to play. We could only rehearse when somebody's mum or dad went out, and we moved all the gear in and did it and then fought the neighbours off, like a lot of bands, I'm sure, at the time. There weren't rehearsal rooms or anything like that. No, we didn't have a plan. We didn't know anything. We just knew we wanted to do it. That was it. That was as far as we got.
Well, talking about plans, though, what you seemed to did have a plan, though, was after Nothing Fancy and Terraplane, you and Luke, you got a much clearer vision once you'd visited America and saw how rock music was so popular. You'd been messing around with different styles and music through record label, they've been telling you what to do and all this kind of thing. But once you went to America and saw how popular rock music was over there in the late 80s, that kind of gave you a bit more of a clearer vision, right, for Thunder?
I think so. Our problem was Nothing Fancy was a band that tried really hard. Then we met our then manager at the talent contest I told you about, and he gave us an enormous amount of good tips, pearls of wisdom, guidance, direction. Some of it a bit misguided, but it helped us enormously. I mean, we were convinced the moment we met him, we were going to be famous in 5 minutes because he knew, he used to manage the Kinks, for Christ's sake, back in the day. And he had great stories. He was such a weirdo. I mean, I don't know what we'd have laughed at. We've said it so many times. If we didn't have him, I don't know what we'd have laughed at because he was so funny. He didn't know he was funny, but he really was. Super posh.
Very eccentric.
Oh, yeah. Once met, never forgotten. I mean, you would never, ever forget meeting this guy. How someone didn't kill him, I don't know, because he was amazingly rude. But like a lot of posh people, your archetypal posh person in any kind of TV show, that's him in spades. I mean, he was just so funny. We had no idea he was. Really, really good. Completely oblivious. But he gave us a lot of tips. And from there, we went into Terraplane, changed the name, changed the lineup. Everything got a little bit better. Like I say, Looking for a Good Time, that had already been, but we knew we had to change it. And we got rejected by every record company in London, sometimes twice. CBS turned us down at least 3 times. But Robert found us a publisher who agreed to put us back into the studio with a guy called Guy Bidmead. And he was an engineer/producer who'd worked with Thin Lizzy. And we went into Brit Row, which was Pink Floyd's studio, which was kind of, right up there. To go to this place, we thought, we've got to do our best here. And we did a song called I Survive. And that basically was released by our publisher had an office, I think, above Cherry Red Records in West London. And they had a rock label. And they agreed to release the 7-inch single for us. And they gave us the money to hype the record. They told us where all the chart shops were and sent us off to buy them. And we got it into the lower reaches of the 40s by buying hundreds of copies. I affected a different accent everywhere I went. It's the truth. And we bought all these copies. They gave us the money. We bought all the copies, got it into the chart. Next thing you know, CBS were on the phone. By then, Terraplane were headlining at the Marquee. They wanted to see us play at the Marquee. And good story about Luke being got out of the bath. His mother got him out of the bath and said, there's a guy says he's A&R from CBS. And Luke said, just tell him to fuck off. It's Harry pissing around. And so she went back and said, Luke says, fuck off, stop pissing around. And the guy said, I don't know who you think I am, but I am from CBS and we do want to come to the gig at the Marquee. I think they said they wanted 20 guest tickets. And Luke said, no, we'll give you 10. You'll have to buy the rest. So they came. We didn't tell the others in the band. Luke told me because we thought they might panic, and they would have. So we basically had them all there, this kind of renter mob coming along to look. But they only came because they thought we were popular, because we bought all these copies of the single. So it was amazing. So as a result, we got a record deal finally after 9 years of being in a band and being rejected by everybody. And from there, that kind of gave us the impetus to get going. And of course, we learned a lot over the next 3 years with CBS, or Epic, which was the label we were on. Basically, how to do everything wrong.
Okay.
We assumed they knew what to do with us, which was wrong. We assumed they knew how to market us, wrong. We assumed our manager would have a very strong position with the label, wrong. He was so desperate to keep us on the label after all these years that he basically gave in to all their demands. And we were wrapped up in cotton wool by him. So we never really knew what was going on. It was only after we fired him and went to America that we suddenly, we went to America for 2 weeks and we had meetings with people, and the kinds of things that they were telling us about what was going on and places they told us to go. Everything we did just made us a little bit more aware. It was like the scales had been lifted from our eyes. And when we got home, we just said, we're going to do this. We've got to do it our way, and everybody can go fuck themselves. It was as simple as that. So we fired everyone. We fired half the band, fired a manager. We fired everybody and started again. At that point, we got a new accountant. Our mate, who'd been our first ever bass player back in the day, came back to be our manager. He found us a really good lawyer and a really good accountant. And the accountant introduced us to Andy Taylor. And Andy Taylor was busting to produce a young British rock band. We got on immediately straight away. Because we'd had a bit of a kick in with CBS, we lacked a little bit of confidence. Although we were very determined and we were very angry that we weren't going to be treated the same way. They weren't bad to us. We just didn't know when to say yes or when to say no.
You didn't want to screw things up because you trusted them in a way. If we start making demands, they're going to get pissed off.
Yeah. And we assumed that our manager knew. And so he would steer us and steer them. But that wasn't the case. So as a result, when we finally got very angry and we started again, we got our old bass player back into managers, as I said, and he recommended us to Taylor. We met Taylor. We got on with Taylor, and Taylor just said, don't worry about it. Turn it up and drink more. And that was the best advice. We called him our attitude manager.
I read that. That's amazing.
We did some demos with him. Demos were great. And then from there, the whole kind of Thunder thing just took off. Somebody in the studio gave a cassette to a journalist, rang up wanting to know what was going on. We didn't have a bass player. We weren't ready to play. We didn't even have a name for the band, but people were talking about the band and writing about this demo that they'd heard. It was just a demo, but everybody was getting very excited about it. And we had absolutely no plan whatsoever. All we knew was that we weren't going to get treated the way we were. We were going to do it our own way, on our own terms. And if they didn't like it, they could go fuck themselves. I mean, it really was as simple as that. So the more horrible we were to people, the more they liked it. I mean, I set off a fire extinguisher over the guy who ran Arista Records. When he came to see us play a showcase, I actually banned the word showcase. I wouldn't allow anyone to say you're coming to a showcase. If our manager said showcase, I just shot him 1,000-yard stare as if to say, don't say that again. We'll play and you can come and you can watch. But when the guy who signed us, a guy called Nick Gatfield from EMI, when he signed us, he came along. We didn't tell him that there were 4 record companies in the room. He thought he was the only one.
Right.
And they all looked at each other a bit nervously. What's going on here? Oh my God, it's going to be a bidding war. And we played 4 songs. They thought we were going to play an hour. And we just stopped and said, right, who's buying me a drink? Let's go down the pub. And we were just so arrogant. We just didn't give a shit. It was brilliant. And the more horrible we were, the more they loved it. He sent us a telegram saying, I'm not getting into a bidding war. I'm going to America tomorrow. Here's my offer. If you want it, call me up. If you don't worry about it. And he went, and the manager called us and said, what do you think we should do it with him? We like him. He's like us. That's how we signed to EMI.
They say what luck is preparation meets opportunity. You'd done all those years of groundwork, making the mistakes and like, screw this, we're just going to do it his own way. And then all these kind of incidents, getting Andy Taylor on board, eager to work with a young band and freed from the confines of Duran Duran. He just wanted to get back to rock music. And then you did arguably one of the greatest festival sets in history at Donington, 1990. Everything kind of seemed to converge at once.
I think Malcolm, our manager, was absolutely brilliant. I mean, he surrounded himself by really good people, great advice from lawyers, set up great relationships with key promoters, agent, all this kind of stuff. And there was a real kind of feeling of impetus. We couldn't really do anything wrong. Everything we did seemed to result in something really good. And it just had a momentum of its own. It was like a snowball. It didn't take very much to get you going, but everything we'd done in the previous years, all was brought to bear, all our experience, all our, I wouldn't say anger. It wasn't anger, but we had loads of attitudes. I mean, we just were not interested in being told what to do. And we weren't kids. You know, when we signed to EMI, we were 30. So we were very lucky to get another go. You wouldn't get it now. But in those days, we were lucky that we did get another shot. And the record companies were all looking for like Guns N' Roses UK. And they didn't get that. They got us, which was, I don't know, but Axl Rose was a big fan. Coverdale was a fan. Aerosmith guys were a fan. And our celebrity fan club just helped to pave the way. You know, even when we were on that Donington gig, you know, Aerosmith were on their way in on the bus with John Kolodner, legendary A&R man, weirdo I call him, but they were on their way in on the bus. It was carried with a 2-minute delay live on the radio. And we were playing. We'd already done shows with Aerosmith because of the connection with Mike Fraser, who engineered our album, and he also engineered and mixed all their albums. So he was banging on to them and Coverdale because he'd just done the kind of Coverdale Page album. You know, there was a lot of synergy going on. And he just basically rammed it down everybody's throats. And they were on the bus. Kolodner said, hey, these guys sound great. Who are you? Aerosmith said, this band we've been telling you about, you need to go sign them. And quite literally, I mean, we'd already been on Capitol Records via EMI. And that had all gone horribly wrong because it turned out the guy who ran the label hated us. He must have woken up every morning thinking, I've got Great White, I've got X, Y, Z. All these bands are all on Capitol Records. He must have got out of bed hating his job because he hated rock music. So Christ knows why he was there. Hated us. We found out. And then the whole kind of Geffen thing happened via Aerosmith. And then the next thing you know, we were on a plane going to America to sign to Geffen. So to my knowledge, I think there's only 1 or 2 occasions when the same album has been released twice on different labels with different covers. And ours is one of them. And that's what happened with Backstreet Symphony. It was mad. It was completely mad. It was a very mental few years. No doubt about that.
Quick one last question, though. Did it sound as good on stage at Donington as it did on the radio and out front to everybody?
I genuinely couldn't tell you. I was so relieved. I mean, I'd lost my voice in the previous few days and I had no idea whether I could sing when I stepped out onto the stage. Nearly 90,000 people there. My little arse was going like that, you know, just terrifying. And if you see the video, you can actually see my face change and you can see the relief. It's palpable on the faces of the other guys in the band. And the moment I hit the first big note in She's So Fine, you could see that all their shoulders went, amazing. And then the first bit came in.
Let's have some fun.
And we're just all running around the stage like rabbits. I honestly, genuinely cannot remember anything about that gig. I was just like, hooray, I can do it. It's going to be all right. Because up until that point, I genuinely had no idea if I was going to be able to sing. Tommy Vance, actually, he was the funniest on the way in. He had a little DJ booth on the side of the stage and there was a big rumour circulating that we weren't going to be able to play. And I walked up the stairs and he said, oi, come in here. And I said, what? He said, come in here, I need to talk to you. Because he'd always been a big fan. He'd supported Terraplane on British Forces Radio, all that kind of stuff. So we'd known him forever. We'd done sessions for him. He was such a good bloke. And we went in there, his little booth, and he said, you know, this is live on the radio, right? I said, yeah, with a 2-minute delay. He said, yeah, the 2-minute delay is to allow me to edit out any of the swearing, if you swear. I said, right. He said, but I hate editing. Hate it. I don't want to do it. So don't swear. So I said, all right, I won't, Tom. I won't swear. And he said, sure? I said, I won't swear. He said, fine. He said, how are you feeling? I said, I'm terrified. He said, yeah, don't worry about it. He said, you'll be all right. So I said, right. And I won't swear. So he said, sure. I said, I won't swear. And as I went to go out of the DJ booth, he grabbed by the arm. He looked around. He said, remember, don't fucking swear. And I laughed so hard as I walked onto the stage, I completely forgot about my fear. And I'm absolutely convinced he did it deliberately.
I love that. Danny, thanks ever so much, mate. I won't keep you because I know you're busy, but love speaking to you, and thank you for all the stories.
Thanks a lot. I'm happy to do it again another time if you want. We do part 2.
Oh, there's plenty I can dive into. If you like how this one turned out, we can have a part 2.
Good man.
All right, mate. You take care. I'll speak to you soon.
And you. See you later.
Big thank you to Danny Bowes for being a top gent and speaking to me on the Straight to Video podcast. Be sure to visit thunderonline.com for all the up-to-date information on the band and pick up their brand new album, All the Right Noises, wherever you grab your music. If you're a little behind on listening to earlier episodes of our show, if you've listened to all 80, then I am impressed. But if not, please find them all waiting for you at stvpod.com, along with some straight-to-video music videos, and you can even grab a straight-to-video t-shirt too. I look forward to heading into the next 20 episodes with you lot as we cruise to 100 shows here on the podcast. A couple of fun ones coming up over the next couple of weeks, and I know I always say that, but I'm being spoiled with everyone who is agreeing to chat, and it's great to let you all hear them too. So until next time, be sure to look after yourselves. Thank you for listening, and I'll catch you all soon.